So hello and welcome to another episode of Wiki Weekends. I'm your host for this one, Karl Smallwood, joined as ever by the lovely and luscious Lucas Holland.
Hello there.
And today we're talking about something decided on by our fans over on Patreon. And I gave the fans over on Patreon, Lucas, a choice of what to pick. And the choices for topics were my favourite video game, my most anticipated video game, my most disappointing video game, my most disliked video game. And I'm now going to tell you which video game I picked, and I want you to try and guess which of those topics it, relates to.
Okay, so immediately my first instinct is to say that it's one of the two negative choices, because that's what everyone always picks.
Yeah, it's the internet. People want to hear you talk about something that you either don't like or are disappointed by. So you probably it's 50-50 at the moment, Lucas. So I'm going to tell you the name of the game, and the game is Scorn.
Okay, that can't be your most disliked game. I remember you saying that, you didn't, you were disappointed by it, but it's not like you hated it, right?
Yeah, so you're right, Lucas. It is my most disappointing video game, Scorn. And to be clear, when I say this is my most disappointing video game, it doesn't mean I don't like it. That's why we had a separate topic people could vote for that was my most disliked video game. If you want to know what that is, well, I guess you've got to wait until it comes up as an option to vote for again over on our Patreon. But I like Scorn. I like Scorn a lot, which is why it's so disappointing, because I can see the game that I would have wanted when I'm playing through Scorn, and it's just not that game. It's a good game, but it's not the game I want. And how familiar are you, Lucas, with the game Scorn?
I am familiar with it to an extent because it was showcased a couple of times during different, I think it was Xbox showcases over the years.
Yeah, and it's one of those games that you see and you just go, the hell is this?
Yeah, because I can't remember, you'll have to clarify, either through your own knowledge or through the wiki, whether it was actually designed art-wise by anything H.R. Geiger made, or whether it was just inspired by their design.
And that is the beauty of Wiki Weekends, Lucas, because even though it's a subject I am intimately familiar with, you're not, but the wiki will help us both get on the same page, specifically this Wikipedia page. So, Scorn is a survival horror adventure game developed by Ebb Software. The game is inspired by the works of Swiss visual artist H.R. Geiger and Zdzisław Beksiński. And he's a Polish surrealist. And I'll put an example of Giger's work here, an example of Beksiński's work here. And I hope I'm pronouncing both of those names correctly. I apologise if I'm not. I did look up pronunciation guides before starting this video. Because that's such a cool name, right? Beksiński. That's such a cool last name. And they're both artists who created some truly nightmarish artwork. Giger is the artist I'm more familiar with, because I'm a big fan of the Alien franchise, and his biomechanical weirdo artwork is what directly inspired the Aliens, specifically this painting here.
Yeah, because that's the thing, I didn't even know much about Giger. I didn't even know whether it was Giger or Geiger, because I've heard it pronounced either way, but all I knew is that they have something to do with the design of aliens, or alien, whatever, the big scary things that eat people.
And Giger, as mentioned, was best known for his work in relation to the Alien franchise, and something that is ever present throughout his work are the sexual under and overtones. Because I struggle to call them undertones when the creature that inspired the Alien just has a dick for a head. It's just a dick.
And then there's also obviously the Facehugger, again inspired by his work, which just, as far as I'm aware, just looks like a...
It's a crab with a penis.
Yeah.
That's the thing about the Facehugger, the detail that's really creepy that you don't really notice when it's scuttling around the floor. He's got a big ball sack. He's got a big ball sack right at the bottom of it. It's just a crab with a giant dong that jumps up and shoves said dong down your throat. That's not me reading into it. That's what Giger himself would say in interviews when he was talking about the Facehugger.
Having been a professional industrial designer, it means a lot to me to have a design show its symbolism as well as its functional aspect clearly. Therefore, I endowed the facehugger with the spring-like tail he uses to propel himself out of the egg, also with 8 long-jointed fingers and 2 pulsing testicle-like appendages for the spores.
As for Betsinski, he's better known for his really oppressive, surrealist landscape work. And I'll put some examples of that artwork on screen right now because they are both phenomenal artists and they were the direct inspiration for Scorn, the video game. And I'm a big fan of Giga's work. I'm not so much a big fan of Betsinski's, but I have seen their artwork float around the internet. I'm like, okay, that's cool as fuck. I want to know what's going on there. I don't want to live there, but I want to know what's going on. I want to know the deal.
And that's exactly what it looked like when you watched a trailer for Scorn, right? It's just, this is real impressive artwork. I don't want to live in this world, but goddamn, it looks memorable and cool.
Yeah, I want to explore this world. And, the wiki entry finally says in the intro, it was released in 2022 for Microsoft Windows and the Xbox Series X and S, being subsequently released for PlayStation 5 the following year. It is played from the first-person perspective and has a biopunk theme. And as mentioned, this is my most disappointing video game because I was so excited when I started seeing trailers for this thing and I was like, oh my god, what is this? You walk around this nightmarish Giga-esque landscape and shit's gone real bad. I want to play this game. And then the more I saw about the game, the more disappointed I became. And I can pinpoint the exact moment where I was like, oh no, it's not going to be the game that I want. And it's the moment in one of the trailers where the player character pulls out a gun.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right, is in my head, it went from, oh, this looks like a really cool survival horror game, to, oh, this looks like a creepy as hell, maybe horror shooter. And then the game came out, and it was kind of neither. It was more of a first-person puzzle game.
Yes, and we'll get to that in a moment, because it's weird how it doesn't mention that it's a puzzle game. And I personally don't think the game is a puzzle game, so I'm glad that Wikipedia agrees with me on that. But a lot of people, when they were describing it in reviews and stuff, are like, oh yeah, it's a puzzle game set in this nightmarish Giga-inspired landscape. And it's like, it's not a puzzle game, because puzzle games have puzzles in them, and Scorn doesn't have puzzles. It has, like, Joe, like the block thing that you give to a kid and they put blocks in. It has those with admittedly very awesome looking like skin put on it. The same can be said for the gun. Although like I said, my chub subsided the moment I saw the player character pull out a gun. It is a cool, weird ass looking alien gun that is alive. And admittedly, it looks really awesome, but the second your character has a gun, I can only think too, this really great quote from Lorne Lanning in regards to the creation of Abe's Oddysee, another game I'm a huge fan of because I just love the world. And during development, Lorne Lanning kept having pressure applied on him from higher ups at Sony, I think, telling him, okay, Abe needs to have a gun. Like, action games do really well. Give Abe a gun. And Lorne Lanning's response was,
and I was like, if we give him the gun, he's going to solve every problem with the gun. And then you're no longer in a puzzle game because the guy's got a gun.
That's part of the nice thing about Abe's Oddysee is that you don't have a gun, but some of the enemies that you take control of do, so it gives you that controlled environment where you're only allowed to use guns sometimes.
Yes, and that was how that argument was solved, by giving the player access to a gun in a very limited capacity. And it's the same thing with Scorn of, just like the moment the player has a gun, it's like, okay, so the gun's going to be the solution to a lot of problems, right? And it is. Like, the final thing that you do in the game is you have a very, very bad fight with again, admittedly, very cool-looking enemy with your weird alien grenade launcher.
Right, and that's part of the thing, right, is we keep referring to the fact that this game still looks incredible artistically, but if anything, that just makes the fact that the gameplay isn't for you even more frustrating and disappointing.
That's why it's disappointing, because I love the world, I love the look of the game, I love the fact that it's very ambiguous what the hell is going on. And I've seen like screenshots of the art book, and where they go into detail about the inspiration for like elements of the world. I'm like, I need to own this. It is on my list next to the art book of H.R. Giger's work. And you know what? If anyone out there has a copy and you want to sell it to me, I will buy it from you. Contact us in our Discord or contact me on social media. I will buy it from you. I cannot track down a copy of the art book for a reasonable price anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but, you know, we're not talking about the art, Lucas. We're talking about the gameplay first, because that's the first section on Wikipedia. So, gameplay, the player controls an entity. And I love how it's just an entity, because you don't know what the hell you are. Like, you're roughly humanoid, but you don't know what the hell you are. You don't know what the world you exist in is. You don't know what your purpose is. You just know it's real bad, and you've got to get out.
That's a kind of approach to lore that you don't see very often, but I do kind of appreciate, is that I love a game that explains almost everything or almost nothing.
And this game explains nothing, and everything you can pick up on about the world is told entirely through the environmental storytelling.
Yeah, that's really cool.
It really is. Again, I was so excited until the guy pulls out a gun. It's like, God damn it! But you traverse the world filled with grotesque creatures and techno-organic living structures composed of machine, flesh, and bone. And as mentioned, it's directly inspired by the work of two creatives, and you can really see the Giga influence because there's penises everywhere. Which, is great. It's fantastic when you're just looking around. It's like, oh, look, that thing's just a giant dong. Sick. Let's go.
Just everything must be some kind of sexual organ.
Yep. Pretty much everything in the world is. Pretty much everything. Like, to the point where one of the final things that happens in the game is you just see your player character's dong.
Oh.
He just flops out completely in the middle of a cutscene. I remember when I played it, and I was like, hang on. Did I just see Scorn Guy's dick? So that's what people call, the main character, they call him Scorn Guy. I'm like, did I just... No, it can't have been. But then, a piece of machinery comes down and grabs onto the dong, and it starts to suck in. And I'm like... What is going on?
Oh.
Yeah. And do you know what, Lucas? It's real weird and it's real fucked up. And that's the sort of stuff I like. Do you know what I don't like? I don't like when, to get to this cutscene that was making me go, I've got to have just really bad, clunky shooting sections.
Right.
Also, you've got really bad puzzle-solving sections.
Yeah, because that is one thing that I was a little bit confused by when you were talking about the game earlier. It's just every single review, as you said, that I saw described it as more of a puzzle game.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I would love it if it was a puzzle game, but it's not a puzzle game. It does have puzzles in it, but to me, a puzzle game actually has puzzles that are difficult to solve. What Scorn has are... Do you know, let's use a comparison that's a bit more popular. Resident Evil 4. During Resident Evil 4, there's the sliding puzzle section in the castle.
Yeah.
I would say no puzzle in Scorn has a greater degree of mechanical complexity than that puzzle or that type of puzzle.
Right, okay,
but, because the world is so alive and they want you to, really take in everything you're seeing, doing the puzzle takes ages. So, last thing, is that sliding puzzle in Resident Evil 4 difficult, Lucas? It's not, is it?
Not overly. As somebody that's awful at sliding puzzles, not really.
It is a puzzle, but anyone who's not interested in actually figuring out how said puzzle works can brute force their way through it. And one of the things that facilitates that is just the fact that you can just go... Whoosh, 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 whoosh. And
Carl, you've just demonstrated how I solve that puzzle when I play.
Speaking of easy to solve, I have made a meal out of this.
You have. It's you were so close. I think though, with these puzzles, they're similar to Rubik's cubes, where when you look like you've almost done it, you don't want to mess it up.
Yeah.
Which prevents you from actually making the moves required to solve it. And in Rubik's cubes, once you've got a side done, you don't want to mess up that side. And that prevents you from actually solving things. Did I ever tell you that my brother got really into Rubik's cubes?
I don't think you mentioned that before.
Yeah, he got super fucking into Rubik's Cubes, and it was really annoying because he bought lots of Rubik's Cubes and kept talking to me about Rubik's Cubes. And I don't care about Rubik's Cubes. The only thing he showed me that was remotely interesting is that there is apparently like tech in the speed cubing world that is very controversial, and it is that you can turn the corners round.
Oh.
If you grab the corner, you can flip the corner, and which is not a move that you're supposed to be able to do with a Rubik's Cube.
Oh, wow.
It's not supposed to do that, but you can, and they make special ones now that way it's you can easily do it. And that's one of like the high level techs of like, oh, you turn the corners round. And here's the thing, even if you don't like that sort of puzzle, or even solving puzzles, like that section is not too much of a roadblock, because again, you can brute force your way through it, you can go. Now imagine, Lucas, how frustrated you will be with Resident Evil 4 if every time you tried to slide one of those things over, it took about 25 seconds. It doesn't make the puzzle any more difficult. Like, the mechanical complexity of the puzzle is the same. It just now takes you 4 times longer to solve.
Yeah, I'd probably scream at my television, because that's exactly how I solve those sliding puzzles in a lot of games, is just I brute force them, because again, I'm terrible with those specific sliding puzzle segments.
And I've actually thought of like probably a better example. The remake of Resident Evil 4 and the Del Lago Lake puzzle.
Oh,
that one.
That one.
So I think the sliding puzzle, that's probably a bit unfair. Right? That is a little bit easier than some of the puzzles in Scorn. But that Del Lago Lake puzzle, which I think was a roadblock for a lot of people, and it takes, if you try and brute force it, takes like, 2 minutes? And it's really annoying, right? But
it took me like nearly 10 minutes one time when I fucked it up.
But one of the things that makes you not get as frustrated with it is the fact you can, like, it goes quite quickly.
Yeah, at least it's like I'm spinning through my options relatively fast.
But now, Lucas, imagine, like I said, if every time you try to alter an aspect of that puzzle, it took 30 to 40 seconds.
Trust me when I say it could go fuck itself, because there's times when bear in mind, I've played RE4 Remake over 10 times through. Everyone just... There are some playthroughs where it's not even worth me attempting that puzzle. It'll frustrate me. I'm going to leave it.
Yeah, and that's what I think is the issue with Scorn. Of none of the puzzles are any more difficult than that in their mechanical complexity, which is why I don't consider it to be a puzzle game, because a puzzle game would have harder puzzles. Like, that's the sort of puzzle you put in a game that's not a puzzle game. You put in like an RE4 just to break up the action. Like, you wouldn't call RE4 a puzzle game, even though it has numerous elements like that, would you?
No, exactly, and it's not the kind of puzzle that you would find in something like, say, Portal. Or,
to use a survival horror example, a Silent Hill, where earlier games in that series legit were just like, okay, learn Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? I don't know Shakespeare. We'll go learn. Solve the puzzle.
Come back.
Yeah, go learn some Shakespeare. Like, go out, read a book, and then come back.
And the worst part is, that was before the internet was really much of a thing. Like, obviously, it was invented, but it wasn't as if everybody had instant access to the internet and internet browsers and Google and stuff. So, yeah, go fuck yourself.
One of the things that I really like about Silent Hill is that the developers, they gave reviewers a copy of the game, and then they went back in and tweaked all the puzzles, so that when reviewers tried to spoil how to solve puzzles in their reviews or guides in magazines, they wouldn't work.
Man, that's so hard.
But you know what as well? That's a puzzle, right? That's what you do when your game is reliant on... When solving the puzzle is a key part of the draw of the game, of the series, of the genre. Scorn's puzzles aren't that. They're, like I said, it's the Del Lago puzzle, but every movement you do takes 30 to 40 seconds. That is not an exaggeration. Like, I think the first puzzle in the game that a lot of people like on forum like, fuck this, how do I solve this? It's like, it's not that difficult. It's just that if you make a mistake, that's the thing, do you like the sliding puzzles? If you make a mistake, it's like, okay, now I've got to slide it to get all the way back, to get myself back to square one. And it takes like, 6 or 7 different movements. But, again, those 6 or 7 movements take like 30, 40 seconds. It's like, it's taken me 3 minutes to reset the puzzle to try again.
And can I just say,
Yes.
to anyone that is listening that might happen to either be in game dev or want to be in game dev, if you're ever in the scenario where you're making a puzzle like that, make me backing out of solving the puzzle reset it. Please, dear God.
And here's the thing. I don't know how you'd fix that with Scorn, because the deliberateness, the weight is part of the appeal. Like the sound design, like one of the puzzles of just like you're moving these like random egg things around. Every time you pull one of those things down, there's this like meaty crush as you do it. You couldn't speed that up because then some of the impact of something they clearly worked very hard on would be lost. So the only solution I can think of is either make them into like baby's first puzzles, or just make them a switch that you press. And same for the combat off. If you're gonna put a gun in, either give me better combat or give me worse. 'Cause that's my thing. I'd rather have worse combat in the game than the weird midpoint they've got where your guns are powerful, but your character controls like shit. And that might sound a bit weird, but again, this is a staple of the survival horror genre, at least until like RE4 came on the scene and went rocket launch for everybody.
And yeah, like the original Resident Evil, for example, is like it's got awful tank controls, and a lot of the time the zombies just chew up your bullets.
Yes, like the gun is a trap. Like it gives you the gun to make you feel like you've got the ability to defend yourself, but ultimately the best solution is to run away. The problem with like Scorn's weapons is that they are really, really good. The weapons are actually super powerful and OP. Just that your character controls like shit.
Right.
Which is, and as well, because they look so cool, it makes me wish they were in a different game. It's like, these guns are so interesting and so cool, but you use them like 4 times in the game.
Just
I'd rather not be there.
Scorn guy into Doom.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'd rather either they not be there, because otherwise I'm annoyed that I don't get to experience more cool, weird alien guns, or just not in the game whatsoever, and just make it like a walking simulator, like a Senua's Sacrifice. It's like really, like just winnow down what you want the experience to be. And if it's the visuals and a story, I'm good with that.
I can't speak for Senua's Sacrifice or Saga. I've not played those games, but yeah, it is one of those of just these weird horror games that have kind of come out of late that have been disappointments. I know another one that we could probably mention is Callisto Protocol.
Yep.
Where just, again, it was like the combat was there but wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I'd rather the combat be worse, because otherwise I'm disappointed by the potential. Because I think if you can see the potential what the combat could have been, that's worse than having no combat whatsoever. And like in Senua's Sacrifice, the combat in that is really good, really meaty. It's as involved as it needs to be. But they craft the game in such a way where, whether you're good or bad at the combat, you don't find yourself continually stumbling over it. Because ultimately, the combat is not important to the story being told. They want you to experience the story. And with Scorn, clearly they want you to get through the game. And all of the basic puzzles and the way they're constructed does is prevent you from getting through the game. To the point where, like, a bunch of people on, like, forums and in reviews and stuff are talking like, the game is beautiful, but I can't get past this first puzzle because it's just such a ball ache to figure out how to do anything. And even when you know what you're doing, it still takes ages.
Yeah, I do vaguely remember when the game came out, a lot of the different feeds I follow on, like, Twitter and stuff was just quite a few people experiencing that. I'm really enjoying the world design of Scorn and the sound design and the artwork and everything, but I'm just getting stuck. I'm just getting stuck in this game, and it's a very frustrating experience.
These puzzles, which aren't difficult, they're just frustrating, are a roadblock to my enjoyment of the world you've created. Like, you clearly spend so much time creating this world. Why are you stopping me from experiencing it? With a puzzle that, again, is not challenging, it's just frustrating to deal with. And then compounding that is the fact that the checkpointing system was really bad. And because your character controls like crap, which is not a big deal, it's not the worst thing, almost every survival horror protagonist controls terribly. Right?
Yeah.
Almost all of them do. Like, look at the way James Sunderland runs like he's shit himself. Like, and Leon Kennedy couldn't do anything until RE4 when he suddenly learned how to backflip out of nowhere.
Actually,
it's not a bad thing that your character controls poorly, but when you combine that with bad checkpointing, and sometimes the checkpoints will send you back before the puzzle, which remember aren't difficult but can take upwards of several minutes to solve even when you know the optimum golden path to get through them. Like, I think I watched a speed run, and even in the speed runs the puzzles take like 7 minutes to do, and they're not actually doing anything that complex. It just takes that fucking long to get through them. It's like, oh, you just shot yourself in the foot with a really cool looking alien gun.
Yeah, and it is one of those things of, it sounds like the game is disappointing, but at the same time got enough good elements where this is the kind of game where you'd hope it would get a sequel that fixes a lot of these things.
A sequel or a director's cut. A director's cut that removes the puzzles. Just play
like
a cutscene where the puzzle
right?
solves itself, because the puzzle, again, like I say puzzle, like, unless I think like for example, one of the earliest ones that you will solve, and it's one of those things where it's also really disappointing. It gives you a moral choice, which is something I thought was going to play a bigger role in the game, where you solve this puzzle and you crack open this weird egg thing, and out pops this creature. And it's this vaguely humanoid, pathetic, barely held together glob of meat that just moans in agony the entire time it's alive. And then you have a puzzle to solve where you have to get through a door. And there are two ways you can get through this door. And you can either give your like weird key thing to this weird creature, and then it'll open the door, which you have to keep your hand on the button to open, and then leave the creature alone. One of the details that's really like harrowing is that once the door shuts, you can hear the creature begging for help. It's wondering where you are. And if you go into like the no-clip camera, it actually escapes from its confines and comes towards the door looking for you.
Oh no.
That's the thing, you feel really bad for it. Or you can put the egg into a contraption, which just grinds it up into juice, and that juice opens the door for you instead. And it's a moral choice of, do you spare this creature that has a vague degree of sentience, but then condemn it to just this torment in an empty room where nothing's coming to help it? Or do you kill it? That's a moral choice. It's not a very complex one, but it's interesting. It's the only one like that in the entire game. And I thought when I first played through the game, okay, I'm looking forward to experiencing more of that. I'm looking forward to experiencing more fucked up moral choices that subtly tell you the story of the world. Of like, present me with more choices of like, do you want to blend the mold man down to open a door? Or do you just want to use him like a tool and then leave him behind and just condemn him to just die in the darkness alone screaming for help?
It would be pretty funny if, though, they had some kind of Super Metroid moment where just at the end of the game you see the little mole thing like fly away in a little baby ship.
That's the thing, people like the mold man, like fans of the game, feel really bad about that choice. And like there are people who've tried to figure out a way to save that, like they call them mold men. That's what you find out in the art book, they're called mold men. And the story to them is, again, really harrowing of, oh yeah, just we take flesh and we just press it into a mold, inject it with like some degree of sentience, and then just use these like creatures as slaves or fuel. Doesn't matter. Just if we need fuel, just grind them down into fuel. They're sentient because they need to be, because they need to perform simple tasks. They feel pain because they need to, because feeling pain is a useful, thing for avoiding like damage to yourself. We don't care if they hurt themselves, but we do care if they lose biomass because we need more biomass. So yeah, you can just grind them up with like a organic chainsaw, and they feel it, but we don't give a fuck.
Yeah, that's some like real Warhammer stuff going on right there.
It's some real dark shit, and I was looking forward to more of that. That is the only moral choice in the game. And yeah,
maybe you feel like they wanted to put more of that throughout the game and maybe didn't have time to implement it or something along those lines.
And I'm inclined to believe that's the case because it happens right at the start of the game. And when I was first playing through it, I'm going to get given a lot of these like moral trolley problems to solve, and it's going to be interesting to see the interpretation of players of, do they operate under the logic and morals of our world, or if you're like me and you start to get into the world. For me, with the choice of the mold man, the choice that I made, the canon choice that I make is grind it up into soup. It sucks, but it's better than the non-existence of just waiting for help that's never going to come. At least when it's the soup, it's at peace. There's peace in the soup.
And also, you kind of making yourself like, and as well, you kind of putting yourself within the world and like almost role playing as that character, just being like, look, this is what you do to mold men. You grind them up. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it's that thing of like, for me, that was like the more moral choice, and I was looking forward to more like examples of that. Likewise, like that's one of the only puzzles in the game you can solve in multiple ways. And again, this is why I don't consider Scorn to be a puzzle game, because one of the hallmarks of a puzzle game, at least for me, is rewarding lateral thinking. Think like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, where you're presented with a puzzle and then just solve it, and you can solve it in multiple different ways. And again, I was looking forward to, they're going to give me all this cool, weird alien technology, and it's not going to operate on the way that we think because it's alien technology. I wonder what cool, awesome ways I'm going to be able to solve these issues. I wonder how I'm going to be rewarded for my lateral thinking. And almost every puzzle in the game just is press a button. Admittedly, it's a button that you press it and your character's arm gets trapped by the organic contraption, but it's still pressing a button.
It's almost like the puzzle equivalent of when you play a sci-fi or fantasy game or something, and every single alien species is just another anthropomorphic human model.
Yeah,
right.
It's the one thing I'll give Scorn credit of. Like, the player character is, vaguely humanoid. You encounter the mold men who are humanoid, but it looks like it sucks. Like, their existence sucks. There's so many weird, just alien things in the world, and they're all fascinating, and I would love to just walk through the world and just experience. for example, at one point in the game, you come across just this giant, like, skyscraper-sized monster. And all it does is just look at you. He's just looking at you the entire time, and it's okay, I need to get past it. How do I get past it? Well, operate this machinery that just tears it apart. And when you do it hasn't got a mouth, it can't scream. It can moan because it's hurt, and when you hurt it, it looks at you, and it's like... again, it's open to interpretation, what you think you're doing there. To me, I think I'm putting it out of its misery, because this thing looks like its existence fucking sucks, but other players have, like, you know, they feel bad about it, of like, oh no, it's an important part of the world, and my character is an arsehole for trying to kill it to get past.
What you're saying, Karl, is that other people have empathy.
Well, that's the thing. Its existence looked like it sucks.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's like with the Mold Man, it's a mercy killing. Of, like, because the alternative is worse than death. And, like, the Scorn universe has in spades, this is worse than death. You would not want to live. Do you know that thing of, oh, you're trapped in the last video game you played for a week, how do you fare? Not well. Not well with Scorn. That's the thing. I love my time with the game, but just every, like, 20 minutes or so, there'd be a roadblock to enjoyment, whether it was just an obnoxiously frustrating puzzle, the bad checkpointing, the fact that when you die in the game and you respawn, you don't get all your health back. So you can run into a situation where the checkpointing can doubly fuck you over, because you might end up with very little health, because there's very limited health pickups throughout the game, which is good. You know, okay, sure, that's a great way to instill a sense of dread in a player, but if you checkpoint me before a fight with grenade launcher firing robo-babies, and I have 1 pip of health, and the previous checkpoint or save point is 2 hours prior, and I say it's 2 hours because I've got to solve a bunch of puzzles that take 20 minutes to solve each, give me more health. Or give me a better checkpoint.
And again, that sounds like another problem that maybe could have been patched.
I think that the checkpointing system was patched, but I played it day one.
That's one of the weird things with gaming, isn't it? Because it's both an art form, but also, you know, it's code, it's a technical product at the same time. It's like, you're so often punished for being the person that supports it day one. Yep.
And I felt like I was, because we can get to that now. So we can just end on the reception to see if, like, you know, my thoughts on the game are echoed by the wider reviewing community. So reception, Scorn received mixed or average reviews, which I feel is fair. It's not everyone's cup of tea, because this is a cup of tea that's full of, like, weird alien jizz, and not everyone wants to drink that. I love it. Give me the goo, but not everyone enjoys that.
You love the alien jizz?
Mate, there's so much alien jizz. Like, there's a machine that exclusively just removes Scorn guys' jizz for reasons.
Oh no.
This game is amazing. Though praised for its puzzles and art direction. See, I don't praise it for its puzzles. I either remove them or make them more difficult. They're not puzzles, they're roadblocks to enjoyment. Like I said, mechanically they're no different from a sliding puzzle from, like, RE4. Like, the actual, like, they don't reward lateral thinking, and they amount to just pressing a series of buttons in the right order, which I know is, like, essentially what all puzzles are, but it's not even that many things you have to remember, like a game of Simon or something. You don't even have to remember that many things in a row. It just takes that fucking long to get through them, that it feels like, oh, that was a really difficult puzzle. It's like, no, it just took me 10 minutes to do it.
Right, fair, yeah.
Like I said, imagine, like, the sliding puzzle from RE4, but sliding each piece took, like, 20 seconds.
Oh, God.
Like, the fact that you can picture that, right, and that would make that game awful. That would be a section of the game where it would legitimately stop you, or make you consider not replaying the game, right?
It would, yes. And it would either be something that either hopefully I could skip, or it would just be one of those segments in a game where I'd just be like, oh, goddamn, like, do I really have to do this again? Do I really want to play through the game again to reach this moment?
Yeah, and that was the same thing for a lot of players in reviews, where, you know, people would get like the first 2 hours of a game, die, and get put basically back to the beginning. And the thoughts of having to solve those puzzles again made them drop the game entirely, which is mentioned here. So, Scorn faced frequent criticisms for its combat, which several reviewers felt was tedious and wholly unnecessary. PC Gamer US described the game as a surreal horror adventure, which the striking visual feast of the alien capital, accompanied by mournful audio, practically moved me to tears. And the audio, again, is super good. So I didn't. I talked more about the sound design of like the squelching and the crunching and just the deliberateness and the weight to everything as it moves. But the soundtrack is also very good. But it's ambient, so there's not really much I can single out besides just it really fits the tone of the game. And I played it at 1 o'clock in the morning on release. And I'll tell you what, that was the optimum Scorn playing experience.
Yeah, and that is one thing where I'm always just like, I do like some horror games. Resident Evil has kind of got me into them a little bit over the years, but for the most part, I'm not great with horror, whether it be movies or games. But the idea of fully, sitting there at 1 o'clock in the morning, lights out, going full, like, just experience mode with a horror game, I'm like, no, I'm out.
Yeah, it was like every time I entered a new locale, I was like, oh my, I just stand there for like 5 minutes, like slowly panning my camera around to look at the detail in everything, because there's so much detail in that world. So like I said, it's just almost no one experienced it because they were presumably just so pissed off with how awkward and obtuse a lot of the game design was, which is mentioned here. Alessandro Barbosa of GameSpot praised Scorn for its interesting setting and aesthetic, but heavily critiqued it for its, and I quote, frustrating combat, unbalanced puzzles, and extremely unforgiving checkpoints, which they felt made the game, and I quote, an infuriating slog. Which is about as my feelings on it too, and that's the thing. Disappointing is the word. I don't want to describe it as a slog, but I couldn't recommend it to someone. If someone asked me would I recommend it, the answer would be no. I can't recommend it to people, even if you like me, you really enjoy the world and the idea of its creation, because it's not fun.
Yeah, and that's really upsetting as somebody who, speaking on your behalf, somebody that was really excited to play the game, right? Just, it sucks that you have to sit there and be like, oh man, I actually didn't end up enjoying this game, especially when it's a smaller team, a smaller game. You don't want to sit here and rag on it, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I hope that throughout this video, people don't take it as me like shitting on the game. I love the game. The reason, and I love it so much that I will sit here for 40 minutes and just exhaustively go through all the ways that it could be fixed to make it better so more people will play it, so it will get a sequel. And the company will get more money to make another game like this that addresses all these issues. But unfortunately, I can't, as I said, I can't recommend it because I didn't have fun. And ultimately, if I'm not ready to want to play a game, that's a disappointing video game.
It is, yeah.
And you know what? A flaccid, disappointing ending for this video too. The ending to Scorn is fantastic. I will say that.
Oh, okay.
The ending is fantastic. A little contrived, a little cliche, at least if you're a fan of the genre and its inspiration. But I did sit there for like, a good 2 minutes just looking at like the final screen going, okay, that's good. I saw it coming, but that's good. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you all.